Hi, this is VOW, Voices of Wisdom, the show that might not be for everybody, but everybody needs to watch this show. Today, we're going to share with you an amazing celebration that just occurred August 26th, and it's in commemoration of the Amistad, which came into Montauk August 26, 1839. Check this out.
I want to thank you all for coming, thank our wonderful musicians, and I also would like to thank the elected officials who have come here on a warm Saturday. And we have Robin Brown, Southampton Village Trustee, Kathy Burke-Gonzalez, Kay Rogers, and David Lees from the East Hampton Town Board, and Assemblyman Fred Thiel, who will be saying a few words. Wow, thank you so much. We are here to dedicate this marker to the Amistad and to the people who are on the Amistad. And the marker was made possible by a grant from the Pomeroy Foundation. On behalf of the William G. Pomeroy Foundation, we send our greetings and appreciation to you from Syracuse on this important occasion. At the Pomeroy Foundation, we feel strongly that historical markers benefit communities in several ways, including by educating the public and preserving local history. Since 2006, when my father, Bill Pomeroy, established the Foundation's first marker program, we have awarded grants to more than 2,100 roadside markers and bronze plaques nationwide. We offer several Pomeroy Foundation marker programs to help people tell their community's history, as well as a number of partnership programs. Being able to tell the story of the Amistad through the lens of a marker is important, and by doing so, you are making Montauk's history a priority. The staff and trustees of the Pomeroy Foundation extend our sincere appreciation to the Montauk Historical Society, Montauk Community, Town of East Hampton, Suffolk County Parks, and all those involved with bringing this project to fruition. You are truly helping to ensure history will be remembered today, tomorrow, and by future generations. Thank you, Darren Pomeroy, trustee.
Still I rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I got oil in my wells, pumping in my living room, just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides. Still like hopes springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise? Like I dance, like I've got diamonds and the mittens in between my thighs. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, whelping and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaning behind nights of terror and fear. I rise into a dark break. There's wondrous clear. I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, and I am the dream and the hope of slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Thank you.
It happened here, right here at this spot. And so I charge you today, now that you know, what do you do? How will we be responsible for ushering in our history that's a part of all of us? It is American history. Although we know the ethnicity of it belongs with many of us, but it is still just as much as your history as it is ours. And so there's no way that we can go up on a rising tide without one another. I need you and you need me. And I want to make sure that the younger generation has this place that they can come and know of this victorious history that can also be erased if we live in a certain state. So we must be thankful and continue to look at the banned history and not allow revisionist history to erase our legacy, which is great, which has downs, which have ups. But what we do want to do is remain in the history books, in the school, in the curriculum. And we do not believe in banned books. And so as much as this is a celebration, it's also resistance. Resistance doesn't have to look violent. It can be the mere fact that we're here today and we're celebrating one another and we're saying we refuse to forget. And so today it brings us great joy to bring up the elected official who we consider to be a co-conspirator and not an ally because he gets in the muck with us. So can everyone give a round of applause for Assemblyman Fred Field?
It's such a pleasure to be here today to commemorate this event, August 26, 1839. My congratulations to the Montauk Historical Society, which has had quite a month here in Montauk with the lighthouse and now the Amistad, and for Brenda and Georgette, who we are co-conspirators and on many, many projects. And you know, my congratulations to you. We have a lot more work to do, but today is something we want to celebrate and commemorate. We are still learning about our history, and I emphasize our history. The good, the bad, we need to know it all. And we need to recognize it. That's the only way we get to move forward as a community. To me, I was a history major in college. You know, I love history, but it's not just about remembering what happened in the past. It's about learning what happened in the past and using what we learned to move forward. And you know, I think of the quote of Martin Luther King. You know, we all came over on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. And we are. We are a great community here on Eastern Long Island. Our history, we need to know it. We need to emphasize it. We need to pass it on to future generations. This marker helps to do that today, and I thank you for letting me be here and to be a part of it. Thank you.
Fred. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oops, and now again.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
I hope you enjoyed that. So today, I have the dream team with us that coordinated what you just saw. We have Dr. Georgette Greer-Key and Mia Shertrick.
Chair teach.
Teach. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about more of what happened on that day in August 26, 1839. And Mia's going to share some information with you that a lot of people don't have an idea that really the Amistad came into Montauk.
That's right. That's right. The Amistad came into Montauk, and it was it came into a place called Culloden Point, named after another boat that was there before them. But it's still today, as you saw when we were there, and you can even see in the film, it's a kind of isolated part of the beach, of the shoreline there. And when we were kids, we called it the end of the world.
Really?
Yeah. It's less than a mile from where I live. In those days, there was no road that led to it. You had to go through the. You really felt as though you were going back into history. And of course, at that time, I didn't know what that history was.
Wow.
So it's interesting. So when we started, at one point there was a sign there. I was no longer a child, and I remember seeing the sign commemorating the Amistad. And then in Hurricane Sandy, that sign was lost along with the stairs and them off the cliff. And so it was really a great thing for us to be able to put that sign back there to remind people of the role that Montauk actually played, because this ship was the Africans who were on the ship, who had been illegally enslaved, captured, taken to Cuba, sold as slaves, and put in this boat, and then mutinied. They convinced the two enslavers to steer them back to Africa, or so they thought. And so they were the Spaniards, who were the enslavers, were steering them towards the rising sun in the morning, but with the sails slack, and then in the evening they would tighten up the sails and they would go northwest, and they were just trying to be caught somewhere on the coast. And when they were hoping, I read in this one article that I think was great, that they, on the 24th of August, they made Montauk light and steered for it in the hope of running the vessel ashore, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, so they did in fact come to Montauk, and there was a lot of press about it. It was a big story. It was not just in the local papers, it was syndicated, it was everywhere, and it was a really important story of the time. And what to me was interesting in the research, and we've talked about this together, was how the story gradually came out very, very slowly, because in the beginning, the people who were telling the story were the people who had interests in that human cargo.
Right.
So that was including the people on the U.S. brig, the Washington, which was a survey ship, the captain and his, I think, lieutenant who captured the Amistad. They sued for salvage rights, meaning that they should be paid money for helping to secure this, everything, the cargo of the ship, which included human cargo. People on shore sued for salvage rights. And the story originally was told by the Spanish enslavers to the Americans who boarded the ship. They happened to speak English quite well, they could communicate, and so their story came out first. But it didn't take long before public opinion started to shift in favor of the people, the illegally enslaved people on that boat. There was an article in the Sag Harbor Corrector that debunked the notion that the salvage, that anything was owed to the government of Spain. The government of Spain also sued for the return of these. It was very complicated. Everyone who came in and looked for money, looked to get money out of this situation. And because the Spaniards had told the story, their story prevailed initially, but it really wasn't long. I think it was already on September 18th that the Sag Harbor Corrector was saying that no, now this is in the courts of law, and the Globe newspaper that, you know, extolled the virtues of the Spaniards' cases, you know, they're not the ones who get to write history. The courts write the history. The ermine of justice is spread over these captives, black though they be, and an almost unanimous public sentiment is watchful that this sacred mantle receive no spot or stain through the promptings or suggestions of Northern men with Southern principles. So starting, you know, less than a month after they were taken to Connecticut, which, by the way, was a slave state, and New York was not at that time anymore, there was public opinion was turning in their favor, and that was even before their story had been fully told.
So, you know, Georgette, I know you said about facts. I want you to talk about that again, what you shared about how sometimes, you know, it's just an assumption, but these are facts that Mia is reading from the local paper that shared this.
Well, I think it's important in this day and time for us to focus on what really did happen, a fact, and from a historical standpoint where this place exists, this is where it actually happened. So that's really important that we are able to go there and visit that space and be in that space, which is sacred, and also a place of remembrance and celebration. But it's not like something, we understand that there is such thing as, you know, global warming. And so, you know, shorelines disappear. But as long as that shoreline is intact right now today, that is a place of historic significance, and that marker demonstrates the fact that it is there. And what I will say about the Pomeroy Foundation, because now we have quite a few markers on the East End, is that anything that is on that marker is a proven fact from primary research. So the facts are all there. And I think to further add to, you know, what Mia is saying about the courts writing history, that's a very interesting concept. We often say is we're going to be on the right side of history, you know, when we have to challenge something. And so we see that in this instant, although there were some conspiracies and commingling and different things, we do see that the courts did record this history. So in fact, looking at how just the actions of these self-determining Africans sought their freedom, and they used the courts to do so. And just think about all the heroes that step up in that story that we don't often talk about, which is, you know, John Quincy Adams, which is the abolitionists, which are the missionaries that gave the book, the Bible, to them to read, and they associated with their story of Moses and letting their people go in their freedom. But also what this court case does, it also challenges earlier cases that did not rule in the favor of the right side of history. So it established that these men were born in Africa.
Exactly.
And that's important when we start thinking about American chattel slavery, because American chattel slavery, it passed on to your heirs. And so that's if you were born here. As Mia said, our history with slavery is nuanced. And so in New York, 1827, slavery was abolished. But we know before that, the uncertainty period, when we look at 1719 and beyond, there was a caveat that if you were born into an enslaved mother, you were enslaved. So that born identity, even in the court case of Amistad, was important to establish that.
You know, Mia, I just, want to reiterate again about how I think it was so important that it was information stated during that time. But like you said, it just gradually came out. So, I have to say we are so proud to have done this. And the other thing that I remember you said that day, Georgette, was this was not just a celebration, but it was also a resistance. Just share that a little bit. I just really, something when I watched that again, it was something about when you said that was powerful to me.
Well, I think about it, and when I'm teaching, I teach about the different forms of resistance. If you were an enslaved person working at a plantation, you could have, done some things like miss the milk, or all of a sudden be sick because you don't want to, come to work, or something happened. Or if you think about the John Brown case, so there are many forms of resistance, even the fact that the mutiny was a resistance. But resistance looks different, the fact that we are here, we're resilient, and we survived, that is resistance. Choosing to be happy is a resistance. And these are all things that were employed during that time and even up to right now today. We are living in a time where curriculum is being challenged and erased. And here, even we don't have to say in other states, but we know on Long Island, there are some school districts that are resisting the history, refusing to teach it, and actively going after boards and electing people to fire librarians. So this is actively happening right now in our region, in our community, in our backyards. And so what we have done is, yes, we're celebrating, but we also want to spark that that unite the fact that you have to be currently watching what's happening. And when we stand up for one another, we stand up for our history, we stand up for our historical sites, to do the right thing and to teach the right thing. That is resistance to some of the people who do not believe that this history is significant, or, like we always hear, oh, that was so long ago. Was it really so long ago? Do we examine how some of these laws and practices have been the foundation of our country, and policies and laws that still exist? So this is the resistance to say that no, it wasn't that far ago, and we choose to remember our history collectively.
You know, Mia, something else we talked about earlier that you were saying was like a sort of a different aspect that was shared recently in the paper, um, having to do with, you want to just share that a little bit?
There was there was recently a reference to the people arriving, the landing party arriving on shore and having a conversation with four hunters they came across, two from Sag Harbor and two from East Hampton, I think, and this was referred to in an article at the time about. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So it was referred to recently in an editorial that upon arriving here, the Amistad said, "Is this a slave state?" And then they were assured it was not. In September 1839, there was a similar story that said there appears to be something contradictory in the report of these gentlemen who say that the Negroes asked what country we're in, to which the Americans replied, "America." And then they had a conversation. He told them that he would pilot them to Sag Harbor, upon which they returned to the schooner. How this conversation could have occurred, says this article in 1839, how this conversation could have occurred when not one of the Negroes can speak a word of English is a mystery to us, unless Captain Green or his friend speak Congolese.
So, what are you saying that might have stated? What are you saying that perhaps they might have?
Well, I mean, I think this is another example of how history is written by the people who have the tools and the power to put it across.
Exactly.
So in this case, it was language. The Amistads could not communicate, and so everybody was sort of guessing. It was guesswork, and stories prevailed that were based on the interests of other people. This captain wanted to prove a point. And so that, I think that's what's really relevant. And with the triumph of this story is that the truth came out. But it took a
Yes.
long time
Yes.
before they recognized that they spoke Mende, and they found someone who could translate it. So but you know, it was one of those wonderful triumphs that, you know, in the end, justice prevailed, truth came out.
And you know, I'm just so happy we're looking like, you know, time just flies when we're doing these shows, which, you know, is challenging. We almost could do a second part two. But I just want everyone to know that you can go to Montauk. You can take your children there, you can take your family there, you can take busloads of school children there, because I think it's important for everybody to know about this history. So I just want to, if anybody have any last words, we have like 20 seconds.
Yes, something that Mia said, you know, you always hear growing up, the truth shall set you free.
Yes.
And so this was the truth, and it set them free. And so it's just an amazing story, and I'm so glad to be a part of this triad
Yes.
dream team.
Yes. So we will do this
Yep.
next year.
Next year.
Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks.